everyone, and welcome back to our second podcast. I promise you I won't number them all as we go through the podcast, but this is our second one. In today's episode, we are going to be going through two lists today. We are going to be going through a Thousand Suns list with Keir, and we are going to be going through our Space Wolf list with Dave. But first and foremost, let's just go across to Dave. And Dave, tell us what is happening at Reaper Wargaming in the imminent future.
So it's nice to be back. Had a lot of fun the last one. In the near future, in the immediate near future, we've got obviously our next club night every Friday. This first one, I think, as the new edition's launched, is set to be quite a busy one with everybody already really active in the Discord and getting signed up and looking for opponents, which is it's really nice to see that buzz and energy coming into the club with this kind of fresh new start for everyone. In terms of events and things that we've got planned, we have our kind of Reaper Fest, as we're lovingly calling it, coming up in the 8th and 9th of July. Should set to be a pretty good weekend. Saturday, the aim is to do a kind of spin on what we had just this for the Leviathan launch weekend event that we had. It'll be mainly focused on building, painting, and that kind of shared hobby environment. Really help people get ready now that they've had a couple of weeks to look through indexes and go back through previous purchases and be like, right, what do I really want to paint? What do I really want to get in my list? And start getting on the table. And the best way to enjoy that is to obviously, get it painted and enjoy that hobby aspect as well as the playing aspect. So that Saturday, the 8th of July, should be a really good day. And we hope to follow that up on the 9th for all the club members. A bit of an exclusive day for club members where we're going to arrange a 1,000 point. So we're going to keep it, we're going to drop it down, kind of reduce that barrier for entry. And it's going to be a 1,000 point games day. It's not a tournament. We're not going down that line, but it's a games day. We'll have a structured format, so we'll use some of the tools and resources that you would find at a tournament to really help us give structure to the day and pair things up and keep things interesting. But the purpose is to get 3 games in the day. To understand that you can get a lot of 40k in one day. And it's not about how many things you have on the table, but it's about being able to just enjoy the fun aspect of rolling some dice with multiple people throughout a day and really enjoy that kind of community aspect that you get from playing. It's, I don't know about you guys, but outside of the club, it's quite hard to get games, and if we can provide people with the opportunity to play people that they haven't played before, or even just meet new people through something like that, I think it'll be a really good day. What I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, definitely. And I can attest to the fact that Saturday was awesome. It was great buzz. Everyone, to be honest, the majority of people were just in there hobbying. So everyone was just in chatting. We had some chat about the Horus Heresy, about where everyone is reading it, whether the Emperor was right or Magnus did no wrong. Like, that's... I can prefer that. They didn't start. But yeah, it was a great day, and if you can get down to it, definitely come along. It's really, really chilled day, and it's just nice to get some chat that isn't intense over a game, where it's a little bit more relaxed while everyone's modelling. So let's get into the list. We've got a bit to go through. We're going to go through 2 lists, and Keir is going to kick us off, and we'll be asking questions, talking through it. But it's just to give you, you lot at home, just an idea. If you're thinking, okay, I play Thousand Suns, I play the Space Wolves, just an idea of what kind of the mentality that went through to build the list, what was sort of thought about, and what that list looks like. And yeah, like I said, Keir's going to kick us off with the Thousand Suns.
Right, so I've been playing Thousand Suns for the last couple of years, and because we want to make this I think we're gonna make something of a series of this. These sort of
Yeah,
list
definitely.
breakdowns. Yeah, well, we'd love them to be accessible to everyone. So we're gonna go a little bit of a lore drop. Then we'll go through the army rules, and then we'll go through the list afterwards. So lore drop first of all. The Thousand Sons were one of the 20 founding legions of Astartes, created by the Emperor of Mankind. And when the Horus Heresy broke out, they were, I'd say, pressured, if not forced, into joining the side of the traitors. Their Primarch, Magnus the Red, is an extremely powerful psyker. I think there's a really strong argument for him being second only to the Emperor in terms of psychic might, considering he absolutely fucking annihilates Malkador, I believe. And yeah, many of Magnus's sons are gifted psychically also. Since the heresy, they have pledged themselves to the chaos god Tzeentch after being tortured for centuries by a plague called the Flesh Change. And in an attempt to cure that, their chief librarian, Ahriman, the first captain, accidentally undid reality around the Legion, and any non-psychers in the Legion were scattered to dust, and the dust fused with the power armour, creating these sort of ardent automata that guard closely their sorceress masters, who command them almost like robots with their warp powers. So very cool. Now they live in Sorcerio, the planet of the sorcerers, and roam the stars, hunting down enigmatic occult lore and collecting ancient forgotten artifacts and just sequestering knowledge. So now that the background reading is out of the way, we can get into some 10th edition army rules. They're quite straightforward for Thousand Sons. So the army rule is called Kabbalistic Rituals. Essentially, like I said, there are many psychos in the Legion, and this is represented by each of your baseline infantry squad, the Rubric Marines, having a psychic sergeant. So certain models in your army, for example, leaders such as the Sorcerer and Terminator armour, Demon Prince, and of course Magnus, as well as Battleline like the Rubric Marines, the Tzaangors have a way of generating it also now, and the Scarab Occult Terminators all generate Cabal points. And you can spend these Cabal points for like a plethora of buffs. Really, it's quite versatile, and some of them are extremely powerful. I think probably one of the stronger ones, Doombolt, is insane. I've used it. I played a couple of games as Thousand Sons in 10th, and Doombolt is just cash. It's minimum of 3 mortal wounds that you just target onto someone, usually D3 plus 3, and if you roll a 6 when you cast it, it's flat 6 mortal wounds. Pretty gross. I think the other big one to watch out for is there is a Kabbalistic Ritual, and it is 9 Cabal points, which is quite a lot. But if you target a unit with this ritual, they cannot make armor saves against your attacks. Which means if they don't have an invuln, any attack that wounds goes clean through. Which is pretty nutty. Oh, especially, we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, there's a lot of really, really nice synergy there.
Can we call them
so
kebab?
that's your basic...
Sorry, can we call him kebab points from now on? It sounds better. Kebab points.
Actually, I was gonna kick off for a second there. But yeah, we'll call them kebab points. So you can exchange your kebab points for wondrous prizes during the game. You generate them every command phase, and as your units die, they stop generating them when they're not in the battlefield anymore. So you generate less as the game goes on as your opponent kills more. So it's a case of smoke them while you've got them. You know, never die with a grenade in the back pocket. Get it thrown. So, detachment rule. Cult of Magic is the only detachment rule in the index, but super basic. Any weapon with the psychic tag, and if anyone's still catching up on 10th, psychic phase is gone, and weapons and abilities now have a keyword psychic, and any weapon with the psychic tag, you can choose in your command phase all psychic weapons either get lethal hits, or sustained hits, or devastating wounds, and we'll talk a little bit more about which of those 3 I think is the best later on. So
what's changed in terms of the kebab points compared to 9th edition to now?
Firstly, you generate less.
Okay.
I found you generate less. I think maybe you can make an argument you generate more, but for example, the Exalted Sorcerer, which is a very common HQ, used to generate 3, now generates 2. Demon Princes used to generate 3, now generates 2. the normal sorcerer used to generate 2, now only generates 1. So the amount you generate is slightly down. I think there are fewer Kabbalistic rituals, and now some of the abilities that used to be spells, obviously now there is no psychic, so they are rituals instead. And I think, to be honest, the changes are quite good, because I think, as any of you have played against my Thousand Suns in 9th would know, it's an absolute nightmare keeping track of what every unit does, because they all have their own spells.
Yeah. It was a lot of admin to try and keep up with. As the opposing player, you're looking around, and at the end of the day, when you've got so few units to see across the table from you, maybe you get a big kind of brick of Scarab Occult, you get a little brick of Scarab Occult, and then, I mean, there was some instances where you could see 6, 7, 8, units of Rubrics just scattered across the table, and you're like, what's doing what? Where's this coming from? Like, how many times have you done this? Like, even just the simple thing of, right, are you casting Smite on an 8 or a 9 now because you've done it that many times?
Doesn't matter. I spend my Cabal points and I cast it for free. I just passed the psychic test.
Like, nonsense like that, yeah. I don't, yeah.
So here is a side question. Smite, you said, are you casting on an 8 or a 9 now? Is Smite still an accumulation of rolls?
Smite is now just an attack roll.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Every Psyker has their own unique version of it, but the Thousand Suns Sorcerer, Aspiring Sorcerer, which leads the Rubric Marine Squad, and the Scarab Occult Sorcerer both have their own version called Warp Smite. It's, for the Marines, you get 2 attacks at Strength 4, -3, 1 damage, but they are anti-infantry 4-up with devastating wounds, so you can still pop off 1 or 2 mortals against infantry. The Scarab Occult get 3 of the attacks instead of 2 because they are much more expensive. Rubrics are quite cheap, and Terminators are still quite expensive. They're still about 41 points each. So yeah, I think actually, to be honest, kind of a good change for Smite, because firstly, it works, it's reliable damage now, but secondly, like, it stops you just... I think I played against Ross, Hellblazer. I remember playing him a long time ago, and he had a Redemptor Dread that ran up to me, and I hit it with like 5 smites, and it just died, like in Psychic, 100-0, and it didn't feel great doing it. Didn't feel great for him. So I think reducing the efficacy of Smite on vehicles and making anti-vehicle Psychic powers, which there is some of in the list, a little bit more selective is interesting because it influences your list building.
Great.
Right. Business. Now, time for the good stuff. We've got the potatoes eaten, vegetables eaten, time for the meat and the gravy. So, we'll start with my leader. It is, of course, Magnus the Red. Oh, nice. My life. Oh, he's so good now. Oh, man. So he's my warlord. He can't take an enhancement because he's named Dave. How good is Magnus now?
I mean, he's still wrong, but always he a right choice. Always he a right choice right now.
Me and David played a couple of games, and like the fact that Magnus gets Deep Strike, it makes perfect sense, and it's a great rule for him. And actually, it's for any of the Titanic models. I don't know if Mortarion gets it. Does anyone know?
Probably as wings.
Yeah.
I'll check.
I mean, well, Death Guard are so badly touched right now that I don't think anybody knows what they do.
Yeah. Back on the shelf you go. But no, he gets Deep Strike, and it makes perfect sense, because Magnus is the type of guy, he's a bloody wizard, man. Why wouldn't he just teleport in the middle of a fight, you know? So, he has Deep Strike, like I said. He is tough. He's hard as nails. 2-up armour, 4-up invuln, toughness 11, which is a big deal, because it means stuff like super crack missiles wounds on 5s, and 16 wounds. And one of the 3 buffs you can select for him gives him -1 incoming damage too. And even then, Thousand Suns have a couple of ways through rituals and stratagems, which we'll talk about later on, to manipulate saving throws. Really, really gross. And you have to deal with him too, because he's pumping out flat strength 9, flat damage 3 shots with his Gaze of Magnus, and then additional shots with Aegis Firestorm. He's a weapon in close combat. He's dishing out +1 to hit and wound with all psychic weapons in a 6-inch aura. That includes himself. You know? So you see your Terminators with their... He'll take them wound them on 2s with his Gaze of Magnus. He'll take them just to their invuln and no more, and he's doing flat 3 damage. It's like the perfect Terminator killer. So, yeah, we love Magnus. Right, moving on. I'll talk about Magnus all day. Ahriman, on foot. He's your boy. He might have made a couple of mistakes, but he did what he thought was best, and he tried, and we love a trier. So, we don't take him on a disc anymore, because if you take him on a disc, the whole unit gets a fly keyword, and there's a bit of anti-fly at the moment, and it doesn't really make sense for him to have a 10-inch move, but the only unit he can attach to has a 5-inch move. So, we take him on foot, save ourselves the 5 points. He attaches to a Rubric Marine squad, the basic Thousand Suns infantry, and he gives them a buff of +1 to wound, as well as a free use of 1 Kabbalistic Ritual once per game. So, once I tell you the Rubric squad he's attached to, then we'll touch on what that ritual's going to be, but it's pretty spicy. So next up for the leaders, Demon Prince on foot, which will surprise anybody who has not looked at the 10th edition rules and knows him from 9th, where he only ever had wings. I've given him an enhancement called Lord of Forbidden Lore, which means that if I have used a Kabbalistic ritual already that turn, he, and only he, is eligible to use it a second time. So, have you guys seen the Lion's data sheet?
Yep.
He's pretty hard to kill. He's pretty hard to kill, isn't he? What if I told you I could just drop 2 Doom Bolts on him in 1 round from like 36 inches away?
He wouldn't be a happy boy, that's for sure.
No, yeah, that kitty gets put down, frankly. So, this list can do that. He is tough as nails, tough as 10, 2 up armour, 4 up invuln, and 10 wounds now, but still doesn't bracket. Okay, fine by me. His melee's nothing to sniff at. He has the equivalent of 2 heavy bolters in shooting, because he does. And yeah, like I said, his melee has a strike and a sweep profile, and they're all psychic attacks, which sucks when you're fighting a librarian, giving the unit the 4 up feel no pain. But if you're fighting anything else, it means that you will get your lethal hits, or sustained hits, or devastating wounds, whatever you chose. It means that Magnus's aura to +1 to hit and wound also affects them. And there's a 1 CP strat in this detachment for reroll all hits and wounds in psychic, and it's yeah. He's flexible in a bunch of different roles. He's OC3 as well, which came into play when we played, Dave.
Yeah. When he stole the objective from Bladeguard. Yeah, that was cheeky.
Yeah. Because there's more of them, but also he's like, a 12-foot tall monster with a massive sword and no wings. So, right.
Keir, what's
Prince done. Sorcerer and Terminator armor. Yes, sir.
Sorry, what's the range of Doombolt?
18.
18.
But I
With a
can
mutalith?
change that.
It can become
I
24.
believe.
Yeah, okay. Just checking, because I was just checking the rules on Lion.
No, it's only +6 inch range. Sorry, I thought it doubled the range.
Yeah,
or does it double the range to a max of 24?
I have no idea. You're the expert.
Yeah. Okay, so either way, before the Lion gets into melee, he gets nucleared. So, and you can do that to people that are in combat too.
I think you need to be,
Not
because I
bad.
was just checking the rules. The Lion has lone operative if he's within X inches of a unit of Dark Angels, 3 inches.
But it's not a shooting attack. It's not a shooting attack. It's just a Kabbalistic ritual that says they take mortal wounds.
Right, okay, so you can select anyone. But you need to be within 12 inches.
It's a unit, so I can't just take your character out with it.
Right.
I don't think I do, because I'm not targeting him with an attack.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which we can look it up later on, but yeah. It's very strong.
I'm the devil's
especially
advocate.
because I can absolutely foresee a ton of lone operatives on backfield objectives.
Yeah, that
with
was
no protection.
That was my idea. I'm playing the devil's advocate here. I have a list, but I'll tell next time because I need to try it first. So I'm just asking random questions. On you go.
So, Sorcerer in Terminator armor is my next leader. I gave him the umbralefic get umbralefic out here. We're calling it the dark matter crystal. That's what it is, right? We love the dark matter crystal. We hate the umbralefic crystal. So he leads a squad of Scarab Occult Terminators, spoilers for my other units, and gives them lethal hits to the whole squad, including himself, while he leads them. And he applies a debuff to an enemy unit, which means that every unit that I shoot that unit with gets reroll once they hit in the shooting phase. Pretty cheeky, because there's actually surprisingly less hit rolls with T-Suns than there used to be. The only army in the game, perhaps. So, the Dark Matter Crystal, for those of you who are uninitiated, means that you can work slightly differently this edition. It doesn't work in the movement phase exclusively. Now you lift your squad in the command phase, and you put them back down at the end of the movement phase, which means that they won't be scoring you primary or generating you Cabal points. Although, I think I was reading something, and we hate this rule, or I hate this rule, I don't know about who. I think you guys feel the same way. I think we've talked about this. I think I saw in the designer's commentary that units that are off the board still do their top of the battle round abilities and stuff like that.
I think it might. I need to double check again.
Have to check that. This has been a point of contention, hasn't it?
I think it's a dumb fucking rule. Sorry, I'm not swear, but it's a very silly rule. And it means that Magnus gets to do his at the start of the battle round, even if he's in deep strike, which means there's kind of no penalty for doing him, which I guess I get, because you don't want to be penalised for using your rules, but I kind of like there's a trade-off. Regardless, I have not been generating Cabal points and stuff off the table, because I think it's lame. So, you pick them up and you put them down 9 inches away from an opponent. That's really good, because every other relic like that in the game specifies you can't do it to stuff that's in engagement range. This one doesn't. So you've tried to gum my Terminators up by throwing, a squad of 10 Blade Guard into them. I'll just pick them up and put them down somewhere else next turn. Very, very cheeky. Especially
too cheeky. Too cheeky, Keir. All right.
Arrest me, officer. Right. This is it's quite standard, I think, for what we're going to see so far. So we'll give it a little bit of spice, a little bit of kick. Last leader. And this is the most time-intensive part of this. Sorcerer on foot. Not exalted. Just a sorcerer in middle management, we'll call him. Because he's not aspiring, but he's not exalted. So he leads a unit of rubrics, and he gives them lethal hits. Whatever. He stops them being targeted outside of 18 inches, which is kind of nice. And I've given him an upgrade, and I've given him the upgrade that everyone gives the Demon Prince. It's called Arcane Vortex, and it means that his psychic attacks hit +1 strength and damage. And you might think, on a Demon Prince's sweep profile, that'd be great. And it is. But people are sleeping on the Sorcerer, because he has an attack called Arcane Vortex is the upgrade. I can't remember what it's called. Fires of the Abyss, I think. It's 2d6 shots, which is awesome. It's only 12-inch range, but you can get there because you can't be shot at with 18, so you'll get up the board, no problem. It's pistol type, so you can shoot it in combat if his unit gets tagged. 2d6 attacks is quite good. You know what's better than 2d6 attacks? Sustained hits 3.
No. Get out of here.
You roll 1-6. He gives the whole squad lethal hits, including himself. So your 6 that you rolled automatically wounds and generates 3 more wound rolls.
Are you Votan?
Yes.
Better.
So now imagine I'm spending a command point and I'm re-rolling my hits and wounds. Right? And now imagine I'm standing next to Magnus, who's given me +1 to hit and wound. He hits on 2s, by the way. So I've got my wound rolls. And actually, quite nicely, as Arcane Vortex has bumped me up to strength 6. So I'll be wounding Terminators on 3s and Custodes on 4s with this attack. And then we roll our wound rolls. And it's AP 1 and it's damage 1. But wait, at the start of the round I've selected in my command phase devastating wounds for my psychic attacks. So every 6 is a mortal wound. But wait, Arcane Vortex gives me +1 damage to psychic. So every 6 to wound is 2 mortal wounds. And every other save you make is AP1 damage 2 now.
The prodigal son returns.
It's filthy. It's absolutely wrong. I wish there was some way I could slingshot him up the board. There is. It's called Temporal Surge. 6 Cabal points. Move a squad a second time in the same turn. They can't charge. I don't care. I'm a 1,000 Sun. I don't want to be in combat. They're not good at combat. Well, some of them are. Most of them are pretty bad. In a general sense, it seems T-Suns don't want to scrap you. They will just mind bullet you. Right. Time-intensive part done. Now for the easy stuff. Battleline. 1 unit of 10 Tzaangors. I gave them the Banner and the Brayhorn because War Gear is free. That's also silly. They are 65 points for 10, so they're a nice cheap chaff unit. I really like them this edition because you have an incentive to pick them. Because if they're standing on an objective marker in your command phase, on a 4-up, they generate your Cabal point. So finally, one of the unique units of 1,000 Suns actually plays with the rules instead of just being kind of like on the side. Really cute. And to be honest, at toughness 4, which is the big clincher, with a 6-up invuln, they're really, really not bad. And the Banner gives them reroll morale, reroll battle shock. And they're OC2. They're up to strength 5 in combat. They don't hit well, but they're annoying to shift because your bolt guns win them on 4s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your Space Marine, let's say your average strength 4 melee, it says Space Marines, but there's a lot of strength 4 out there, goes to winning them on 4s instead of 3s. That makes a lot more variance. You know, it's like a 25% damage drop. So, I think my stats are a little bit off. My point stands, they're tougher. I've got 2 10-man units of Rubrics. One has 8 bolt guns and the Soul Reaper cannon. The Soul Reaper cannon does not get made into a psychic weapon, with the bolt gun turning into psychic and becoming strength 5 strat, which is a shame. But I think keeping that flat strength 6 as well as having 5 shots is just really worth having, because it's really cheeky for chipping away at heavy infantry, or if you're against orcs or something, you'll want 1 of them, 2 of them, 3 of them. And they're free. So, why not?
Why not?
These 10 are going to be linked up with my Sorcerer, my middle management Sorcerer, and he's going to give them lethal hits. So 6 to hit auto wound, and they're basically going to be the meat shield. That they are my shield drones that the enemy have to chew through to get to my Fires of the Abyss caster. So yeah, I like this squad. They're 190 points for 10. That's very good value. They don't have the invuln anymore. Exalted Sorcerers give that as a buff now, but he's not exalted, he's in middle management. So they're a nice workhorse unit. They're OC2, you know, the Sergeant has a power weapon, what's not to love? You got a little cheeky baby smite in there. Great stuff. Second unit of 10, all have flamers. And that ties in really nicely with Ahriman, who gives +1 to wound, and can allow you to use the Kabbalistic Ritual to ignore armor saves for free. So, your flamers go to strength 4, +1 to wound. You obviously don't roll hits. And you're ignoring armor saves for free once per game, or for 9 Cabal points, which you can get. Very, very powerful. And you might think, flamers aren't assault anymore, but they do ignore cover, which is really tasty. How, are you going to advance them up the board? Are you going to use warp time? Nope. My first other unit is a Rhino, because Ahriman and the boys can fit in there. They can zoom up the board 12 inches, and now you can disembark after you get out of the transport. So you're moving them 15 and then firing.
Does your Rhino have a
you can actually move them 15 and then warp them. No, it only has self-repair. But it's 75 points, and the bolters on it are AP1.
75 points. So
that was a bizarre thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Rhino rules are all over the shop, so I'm just playing with what I've got, to be honest.
Yeah, because what was it? Most of the Rhinos have firing deck.
No,
but you guys don't, World Eaters don't, and is it Sisters?
Sisters and Space Marine have it. The rest don't have it. I think so. Yeah.
Did
Custodes not get it as well, though, for the Custodes Rhino?
I'll tell you in a second. What
if
I can
you
tell
own
you...
a Custodes Rhino, shout out to you for being you.
Thank you.
Because I remember one of the graphics appearing and people were comparing. There was I can't remember, maybe it was, there was a list of the 2 different ones, and maybe it was, maybe I'm misremembering at this point. There's just been so much information come at us in such a short amount of time, but it's
a lot of stuff.
How can you have a traditional model that plays across all these factions, and some get a benefit to taking it and others don't?
It's clearly a typo.
Why come up with this new?
Yeah, it's a
You
typo.
think it's a typo?
I think it is, and it must be. And especially the fact that Keir's Rhinos are 75 points. The Chaos Marine ones are 85 points for no reason. There's no difference.
I've got on the Warhammer app as 75. I will check my spreadsheet later on. Also, any of the Discord members, check out if you play Thousand Suns and don't want to use the Warhammer app because it's a little bit buggy and the UI is super clunky, I've put a spreadsheet up with all Thousand Suns point costs and all of the rituals, and I've also got next to every unit in their point cost, I've got the Cabal points they generate. So really nice and easy to track. I'm not sure if the one that I posted up has the macros for tracking Cabal points in your list and tracking the point costs and tracking how much you have left, but if I'll just check after the podcast after we're done recording, and I'll upload the latest version. So
nice.
Check it out if you need. I'm working on the Tau one also, even though we'll talk about it. Doesn't matter.
That'll come
so
up.
Next other unit, Fulvio. You're gonna like this.
Tell me, please.
2 mutalith vortex beasts.
I like them.
I'm so happy they're back on the table because the model is so sick. It's my favourite model. And they're 145 points. And let me tell you, actually, I think my order from Element was expected to arrive in 2 days with them. And yeah, they're toughness 10. Bear in mind, 145 points. This is going to change, definitely. But I'll still use them because they're still cool. Toughness 10. 14 wounds. A meager 4-up armour, but wait, 5-up invuln. Pretty tough. Let's give it a 5-up feel no pain as well, just to be safe. That's absolutely gross as a defensive profile. And you're probably thinking, yeah, it'll gum the board up a little bit with its defensive stats. Probably not outputting that much damage. You're wrong. The shooting output. 2d6 shots at strength 1, AP 1, ignoring cover, and automatically hitting. Or you can get like d6 shots that are basically like autocannon equivalents. Or you get 1 strength 18, -4, d6 +6 damage shot with devastating wounds. And that's going to be enough to hopefully wrangle some of your opponent's armour. Because that's wounding a dreadnought on a 2, and that's no mean feat in this day and age, you know? Tau Railgun, strength 20. So, that's not all. They have 2 melee profiles also. They've got a strike at strength 9, so they will struggle with vehicles and melee a little bit more. And then they have a sweep at strength 7, no AP. The strike is 4 damage too. Pretty mean. But I really like the 15 attacks at strength 7, no AP, 1 damage, because if you use that with the ritual that turns off armour saves, doesn't matter that you've got no AP, because you're taking them to their invuln, or they're not getting a save anyway. So I might as well have infinite AP, you know? Really, really cool. If you're standing beside it and use a Kabbalistic ritual, I'm pretty certain it doubles the range. I will double check that later on. But it doubles the range. Oh, Doombolt's down range. There's a Kabbalistic ritual to pass a reroll save around. Doubles the range. It's cheap. It's 2 Cabal points. Yeah, really, really tasty. In addition, it also does mortal wounds at the end of your movement phase to any enemy unit around it. What's not to love? It's like an extra, just features on features on features, stats and stats and stats.
How many points is that, Keir?
145.
So that is better than the Rock Grinder profile for the Gene Sealers, and the Rock Grinder is not good.
I can't transport.
Okay.
But that being said, I will take the trade-off.
Yeah, I know.
I will absolutely take the trade-off. Also, have you seen the model?
Oh, it's so cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Warp Vortex, Tentacles, Claws. So, last unit in the list, finally. 5 Scarab Occult Terminators. Not taking the 10-man feels a little bit too much like a point sink. They don't do as much damage as they used to because they're down to AP 1 in their bolters and they don't always double tap anymore. The That being said, they have had a glow up in terms of durability. They are now toughness 5 instead of toughness 4, which is a big deal. And they have a 4-up invuln instead of a 5-up invuln, which is great. And if your strength is higher than their toughness, you're -1 to wound them because of their implacable guardians rule. 205 points for the squad. I'm taking the war gear. I know that doesn't give them psychic attacks if I use the stratagem on them, if I take that Soul Reaper cannon, but the Soul Reaper cannon is so reliable. The psychic attack is great with the bolters if you pop that strat on that unit every turn, and you don't know when you're going to be doing that. So, yeah, and also it keeps you a little bit safer against stuff like it's not called Agents of Vect anymore, but every faction in the game, apart from Thousand Suns, has some kind of Agents of Vect mechanic, and like with that 1 CP, make your bolters strength 5 and psychic strat, like that's going to be one your opponent uses that on every game.
Keir, you could have Agent of Vect.
Yes, sir.
If you have Kairos. Kairos Fate Weaver gives you Agent of Vect.
Good point.
Yep.
That is a good point. And actually, I don't hate allying demons into Thousand Suns. I think it goes quite nicely.
Yeah. Because you can get lone operatives and nice tools.
Yeah, the Blue Scribes and the Changeling.
Yep.
Super cheap with Deep Strike.
Yep.
So pretty tasty. Last point on the Scarabs. Their shooting output's great. Their Hellfire Rack's now strength 10 and flat 3 damage. Quite tasty. And in melee, they are fine, but not good. They hit on 3s. They don't really have any melee buffs because their weapons are not psychic, and you cannot make them psychic. They only have 3 attacks at strength 5 -2 damage. So they're still fine. They're an above average melee unit, but they are not a melee unit. You don't want tagged. That's it. That's the list.
Great.
Any questions from you fellas?
Yes. Considering
the time. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, considering the time that we have, we don't want to rush through any of this. I know we said we would do 2, but we'll stick to 1, so we're not rushing through Thousand Suns. And it would be really good to ask some questions, still have a rant at the end, because we all want to have a rant at something, no doubt. Yeah. And also, it'd be great for people just to know some of the combos and some of the synergies with the stratagems as well. So not missing that stuff out as well. But Fulvio, you go. You had a question.
How many points is Magnus, just for information?
410.
Okay.
So, still not cheap. It's like a 20% of your army, but a great price point for him.
It is.
I mean, for what he does, he's the same as 10 Terminators for like traditional Space Marines. Like,
yeah.
And his output, I would say, is probably greater. Over the course of a game, I think he can take out more.
He's probably easier to kill than 10 Terminators.
I don't know. The way he was picking up Blade Guard.
It took him 2 turns to get through that Blade Guard unit in combat.
Yeah, but the previous game he just went Doombolt, boom, Doombolt, gone.
In fairness, Doombolt isn't Magnus' thing. It's everyone's. But no, you're right. He's very great. I see him hitting 430 points and being fair. I think if they put him to 450, people will take way less of him because there's a lot of other stuff you want. The Demon Prince on foot with that enhancement I gave him is now like 240 points, I think. 235. So he's expensive.
And can you make him fly, Keir?
If you'd like, but if you take the Demon Prince with wings, he gets 2 different abilities. Oh my goodness. I forgot to mention, Demon Prince on foot is also, he gives it an aura, 6-inch aura of stealth to every Thousand Suns unit, including Magnus. So anyone within 6 of him is -1 to hit. It's really gross. And actually, that's been the biggest thing, like the biggest reason I've taken him. Because in every single game so far, I think there's been at least one las cannon or crack missile at him from Dave, and he's like, "Oh, there's a 3 that'll do it." I'm like, "Actually, David, I'll have you know that misses now because he's -1 hit." And I think the cheekiest thing. Sorry, I meant to mention this earlier. Once per game, you choose a unit of Scarab Occult Terminators or Rubric Marines within 6 inches of him. In the shooting or fight phase, for the rest of the phase, all the psychic weapons in that unit get precision.
Wow.
Great.
So
wow.
So
So
hard.
they're
consider
attacking.
make all your bolt guns psychic.
And then snipe the character leading units.
Yeah, give them a CP to reroll hits and wounds.
No, thank you.
Or
No,
make the
thank you.
Terminators pump
flamers.
out like 16 shots on that, but then also there's smites as well.
Or make the flamers.
The flamers don't get
precise.
psychic.
Don't. Okay. That's good.
You can't do that, sadly, because
Almost.
you only give it. They have put a bit of thought into it. You can only make the bolt guns psychic, which I'm actually okay with because I think it makes the army a little bit less oppressive. But if you want to talk combos with the flamers, consider the ramifications of an Overwatch with them.
Yeah.
You do it in the movement phase. Someone moves within 12 of them. Okay, have my 9d6 auto hits with +1 to wound for a command point.
Pick up half a cheap unit that gets the wanders too close, try to take an objective.
Oh, that's not a cheap unit, dude. They're AP1.
No, I'm saying, like, as the opposing player, if I've got a cheap unit, I'm trying to get onto, make advantage of OC and grab an objective, and I stumble too close.
Dude, if you send an expensive unit towards them, they don't have to roll to hit. And it's going to be 96 to average on that is 54 halved, 27 automatic hits with +1 to wound and AP1. Like, you might send a cheap unit in, they'll get toasted. You send a moderate, medium unit in, they're going to lose guys. By the time you're scoring, they'll be taking battle shock.
And I think the big thing as well, going back to Magnus, is for an opponent seeing just visually a model that big, you need to make a decision. Are you going to ignore him or are you going to put stuff into him? Because it can't be like half measures. It's like, do I wipe out Magnus or do I not? Coming up against 1,000 Suns.
You're totally right. But the thing is, now he scores too. He's OC 6.
Wow.
And OC 6 is significant because, and I'm just trying to fact check that while I talk. OC 6 is significant because it means he's going to creep out any squad of Terminators if it's like a 5-man because they're all OC 1. So OC 6 to me feels like a bit of a break point where any elite unit that's a 5-man squad, he's going to just creep them on OC unless they have a leader. So
even if they do, he's going to pick one of them up at least.
Yeah, OC 6. OC 6, yeah. I mean, heroic intervention is now 6 inches, and anyone can do it. So yeah, he's I think the big combo is you take your you could use your Terminators. I'd prefer to use my Rubrics with my Fires of the Abyss squad. Pop them next to Magnus, let them reroll hits and wounds for 1 CP, make all their bolt guns psychic for the 2nd CP, because by the way, 1,000 Suns bolt guns are not rapid fire, they always pump out 2 shots.
Okay.
So that's really, really nice. So yeah, there's a lot of shooting to be giving lethal hits all the time from their Sorcerer, and the big one that we said we touched on earlier, always pick devastating wounds for your psychic attacks.
Okay.
Always. Because if your bolt guns are doing mortal wounds, the enemy just doesn't get to make a save. They just take the damage. Every step of the process that you can remove from rolling hit, wound, and then save, you're just going to massively amplify your damage. Because it's less divisions.
So what were the 2 choices? For devastating or...
Devastating or sustained or lethal. But 2 of my units, the Terminators and the bolt gun Rubrics, already have lethal hits because their leaders give their whole squad lethal hits.
Yeah.
So that's a never pick that one. Unless I'm maybe playing... even if I was playing nice, I'd take the devastating wounds, honestly.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
for people who are wondering on those keywords, so devastating wounds is essentially what used to be called mortal wounds. So that dodges the armor save and only is saved on a invulnerable save roll to stop
the feel no pain.
Oh, sorry, feel no pain. My bad. Sorry, invulnerable. Feel no pains. Your lethal hits is 6s automatically wound, and then sustained hits means you get extra hits of X, however many the number is, against your roll. So that's your sort of free options there.
Yeah. See, I've been on the receiving end of this already in some testing, and it's been interesting to see. Marines have so many units, and it's hard to figure out where they're going to land. But when you come up against somebody who has this type of army, where it's quite a dialed-in set of choices, you're able to really get on top of your synergies quickly, and that became evident after only 2 games, whereas I'm still stumbling in the dark trying to pull together things, whereas, like, as you can tell from this, like, Keir's a couple of weeks in and pretty dialed in into where he's heading with this.
I know. Actually, honestly, if points don't change hugely, I'll be taking something like this the first tournament I take T-Suns to, and they'll be the army that I take to a tournament first.
And I can see them being a challenge for lots of people.
They actually, to be honest, I think they're going to gatekeep a little bit, because I think just the amount of devastating wounds they can do, if you can't kill them fast, I think they're going to stop lists that are dependent on just having lots of bodies, because their output's pretty fucking mean.
So you think you can outmanage the control armies then that are going to be out there?
As long as I can keep shooting, yes. And I think this list is really good at keeping shooting, because your Fires of the Abyss, and I know I've been bigging this guy up a lot, but the outputs, I mean, Dave, you saw.
No,
I was running that spell.
Yeah. I've
and that
seen
was the
it.
damage 1 version.
Yeah, and he just picks things up. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how a list like that goes into these, rumoured 30 Desolation Marine lists spamming.
Badly.
But I think that's
everything goes into it badly.
Yeah, like that's the hard counter in that scenario. But like when you talk about, like,
I mean, it's a hard counter to everything because they're the best unit in the game.
No, but but there's only one unit that's going to get the 4-up invuln and protection from.
Nobody gets a 4-up invuln in this list.
No, well, that's true. 4-up feel no pain though. Not 4-up feel no pain. There's a 5-up feel no pain from Librarian or whatever.
The vortex beasts and stuff like that. Yeah. They're pretty good. The Desolation Marines are kind of problematic, and they are
going to be the problem child again.
I do have ways of shooting them back, and actually that leads me into my next combo. So thank you for the segue.
Okay. So you've got Psychic Desolation Marines.
Imagine if you will, you're a Psyker, and your brain's enormous, and you can see through the warp, right? If I can see you with one of my units, I can take another one of my units, and I can spend 2 CP, and all of their psychic weapons gain indirect fire and ignore cover.
Oh.
So, imagine you've got a little character leading your Desolation Marine squad, and my Demon Prince is standing next to my unit of Rubrics, and I have 3 CP. I know it's expensive. This is really niche, right? This is super, super niche. So I'm not expecting this to pop up every game.
I mean, cool. But is this a late game on your CP psychic. Take the game?
I make all the bolt guns psychic. I allow them to ignore cover and fire indirect, and they can shoot their smite too. I give them precision.
Oh.
And you know what? If I have the Kabbalistic Ritual points for it, it allows me to use a stratagem for nothing. So let's say, the hell with it. Actually, let's only spend 2 CP. The first CP we'll spend will be on the Making Weapon Psychic. The second will be for reroll hits and wounds, and for free we'll take the indirect fire one with precision. And round the corner, I will full reroll hits and wounds into your character through the wall, ignoring cover. And if I'm next to Magnus, +1 hit and wound.
Okay, so I'm going to put that straight into like a real game concept. For me. That's a turn 4, turn
that's
the game.
That's a 4 CP combo.
But it's a round 4, round 5, like real game breaking situation. If something's like, if you want to go deal with something on one objective and you know you're going to get to that, and he can see these 2 objectives, and you have the unit that's going to be able to pull that off, that you're all of a sudden, ready to take a lot of the board without actually having to commit to that amount of board. You're only having to go one way, but you can actually clear the rest, which is... I mean, when I'm visualising some of the UKTC boards, and obviously we've not seen the new maps for the UKTC based on these missions, but I'm just kind of visualising existing maps where, you can start shooting over this big L into some of these... into some of these middle ruins that are blocked up and stuff, and still march to a corner and clear a corner. Or obviously some of these missions that we've already looked at where the central objective splits in two, and all of a sudden you've got objectives really close together. You can get a lot of points really quickly and apply a ton of late game pressure with that level of CP spend. Even just the threat of that's scary.
It's 2 CP and 7 Cabal points. 8 Cabal points, maybe?
I mean, so I don't want to jump in too much on Space Marines, but I'm going to be quite starved on CP, I think, most games. So to know that an opponent is going to be quite cavalier and burning too, you're going to get to a battle round. So if you go second, you're just...
The stratagems are really, really good for T-Suns. And yeah... It's pretty important that I spend CP, because if I don't spend CP, it really throttles my damage, and it actually throttles my combos. All of my combos hinge on making my weapons psychic.
Interesting.
Okay, that's good to know for any stratagems or war gear out there that makes stratagems more expensive.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not going to gut the army, but it's going to really make me think: when am I going to be able to use this strat? Do I need to bank some CP now? And I've just checked 6 Cabal points to use this ritual at the start of any phase. Once this phase, you can select this Psycho's unit as the target of a stratagem for 0 CP, even if you have already used the stratagem this phase. So 2 squads with psychic both guns.
It will be interesting to see... Sorry, Nick. It will be interesting to see if you can... what's the word? Is shoot indirect and take precision, because precision is only if you can see the target. But you shoot indirect, which is an interesting interaction.
See, that's going to be needing FAQ, because it's almost like I need to see you with another unit. So it's almost like I'm shooting... from that line of sight, but I think, to be honest, actually, I hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're probably right. I probably can't precision it, so I'll just shoot you through the wall until every model in the unit dies, and then I won't need precision.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough.
My solution.
The devil in the corner there, just advocating for...
No, you're right. I need kept honest because the rules are hard.
Yeah.
But this is...
Sorry, I was just going to say...
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
I was just going to say there's so much that needs to be FAQ, to be honest, because lots of people are asking about lots of rules right across the board on, one that just comes straight into the top of my head is the fact that Necrons seem to be able to overwatch about 25 times in both shooting and in charge phase, and it costs 0 CP for some reason, and that's wild, so there's lots of different things that can happen that there just need to be some hard FAQs, and it's kind of like the day one patch for all you gamers out there is kind of how I see it, is waiting for this the first patch drop to say, okay, it wasn't really finished, but here's a patch to now hopefully make it a bit more finished for you.
Just to kind of round this out, I want to ask you guys a question, and I want you to be honest. Without tailoring a list, how do you think your armies are going to fare into Thousand Suns?
I think I probably can go first. I think for the Gene Seers, it would be quite hard, but I think it would be a hard matchup for you because of how much sustaining power they have. They just keep coming back. And with especially elite armies and slow-moving armies, I know you can do some jump stuff, but it would be quite hard to get rid of my blips as well, because you need to come within 9 of them, so there would be quite a lot of bodies constantly on the board for you to have to deal with all your shenanigans, and they've got stuff that can make stratagems more expensive, so adding CP to stuff.
That's the big one.
So things like that could be, but in terms of putting you down, I think Genestealers would struggle in terms of their weapons aren't super strong. There's a few strong ones out there, but they're not super strong.
I think that like T-Suns have felt quite durable so far, and they felt like in my hands so far they felt very killy, but like it's hard to compare because I haven't seen how a lot of armies are playing. I don't know what damage output is like normal now, so maybe they're just as normal. Like they felt like they could deal with stuff, even shooting against power armor, which is what I've been doing. But I think you're right. I think Genestealers, especially because you just keep coming back, right? Like there's just more
forever,
which is so cool.
Yeah,
so cool. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be tough. I think I'd be relying on my flamers and my vortex beasts a hell of a lot during that matchup.
What about you, Fulvio? What are you thinking in terms of the world of chaos into your Tzaangor brethren?
The World of Chaos. The World of Chaos is the World of Chaos, which implies that I'm looking into like Chaos Space Marines, most of it, to try my Black Legion list in it, which will imply that will be an Abaddon with only 5 Terminators. So I don't know. It's more. My list is weird because I've never played like 10th edition yet. I haven't played any single game. I've only done like some listing and stuff. I don't know. It would be probably tricky. I need to connect because I have 3 units that just 2 damage in close combat, like the Terminator with Abaddon, and 2 units of 5 possessed. So if they connect, they might wipe 10 Rubric, maybe. I don't know. I think they might not be there. They might still be there.
Will.
Maybe not. Maybe, I don't know. It depends.
The Blade Guard that went into my Rubrics. It's the damage too, and Rubrics only have little punchy hands. They're funny. The Sergeant is actually quite good at combat because he gets obviously all the cool rules with his psychic force stave.
Yeah.
But like, I got charged by 5 Blade Guard, and I think I lost like 8 Marines or something like that.
Makes sense.
And I was like, oh.
Makes sense. If
I'll
it
start
was
putting my toys away.
I'm trying to. My list is kind of balanced, like 50-50. It's like 50-50 is between close combat and shooting. I think shooting in this edition, at least in this moment, is way overpowered. So whoever gets to do the jump first with the shooting units can probably take a big chunk of the army. But I don't know. We'll see. Probably, I don't know, 50-50, I would say. It's not easy. Goes down to mistakes on placing units and...
I think I agree and disagree with what you said. So I agree shooting's really strong, but I don't even know if it's about Alpha Strike. I think it just does way more damage than melee from what I found, because I think there's less ways to get in to melee.
Yep.
The addition feels a bit slower in terms of movement. But no, I agree shooting's a little tuned up compared to melee. So I'd be interested to see if they want to make the melee a little bit more killy or the shooting a little bit less killy.
Dave?
And Dave experienced it.
Space Marine Dave, my nemesis, my dream, my nightmare.
I mean, we've now been playing this game of cat and mouse with Space Wolves and Thousand Suns for the last few years.
Oh my god, we have. That's crazy.
For the last few years, and it's safe to say that Magnus is back. He's causing some problems. But I think, from what I've seen so far, I've put together the first game was a bit of a fun list. I wanted to just chuck some stuff on the table that I had available. Second game we had during the lead up to Saturday's launch event, and one of the purposes of that game was to include a lot of the new units that came out that day, and we were going to kind of test that out to stream it in the future. And I was actually really curious to see how a number of those units played out in general. There's been a lot of content on YouTube and various platforms of everything in the Leviathan box, and it seemed like the Space Marine stuff was very strong, and I think a lot of that kind of initial strength from those units has more been down to how weak some of the Tyranid stuff is in that box in comparison. I don't know what else you guys have seen, but for me, that's kind of how that initial thing looked. So I tried to balance it out with some kind of known things in the list. I mean, I won't go into my list that I'm kind of looking at, because I'm leaning two ways, and this is the problem with as a Space Wolf player. It's a good problem to have. I've got the option of a Gladius detachment, or I can lean into the pure Space Wolves detachment, and I can kind of pick and choose based on what the meta is maybe going to present itself as. If we're going to go into what I think is going to be quite a shooty meta, I can lean quite heavily into the Gladius stuff, and really look at the different doctrines, because I found in our games it's the triggering of the doctrines that's going to be really important into dealing with armies like the Thousand Suns. It's
honestly first game that we played, you were a little you wanted to save the doctrines. Second game, when you used your 3 doctrines in the first 3 turns of the game, oh my life, it was so much harder to play against, because you're like, cool, everything's an Ultramarine right now, and it's just going to advance and then get line of sight and shoot you. And in the following turn, everything's on a White Scar and it's going to advance and charge you, and you were in. And in the third turn, you're like, oh, I went in, I'm a little bit gunned up in combat, fine, I'm going to fall back, then shoot you, then charge back in. I think the play was clean. It was nice.
Yeah, I think for me, certainly for my playstyle, I think depending on the game state and the mission, I think I think what I'm going to have to do personally is I'm going to look to avoid the Alpha Strike situation. Not quite at all costs, but I can genuinely see a world where I'm running 2 drop pods, and bringing them in phases and being able to interact with these different doctrines. I think it's going to be really interesting, and having that staggered approach with what can come on the table and when. I think it's going to be really interesting to cause some disruption with like a rapid ingress drop pod in my opponent's turn. Or
a rapid ingress Magnus in your turn.
Well, that,
That's so good.
We played a little sloppy, and we gave each other way too much space to do stuff that we wouldn't normally do. But I think it's in these kind of initial practice games where we're going to be getting these lists kind of fine-tuned, it's actually really beneficial to see what happens when you make those kind of sloppy errors, and you can see just how much punishment you can actually take, and kind of still keep moving forward. I found in that game the first 3 turns I was ahead, and because I had that systemic power of just, I'm changing doctrine, and I'm coming for you, I'm crossing the table aggressively.
Yeah.
And then you go and bring 1,000 points in deep strike in my backfield, and I go, oh, I've crossed all this table, I now actually have to fight myself on 2 fronts. And so I think this is where Space Marines are going to have to be careful, not just into Thousand Suns, but I think into the game as a whole, of not getting dragged all the way across the table. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should.
It's easy to put your foot on the gas with Space Marines right now.
Yeah, because when you go, you have the units that can go, and there's some things I'm looking at, some extra synergies that I'm still seeing now, where I'm like, I think I've got some kind of cheeky plays. There's more and more ways to get +1 to hit and get extra rerolls. I mean, even just this new Las Cannon Dreadnought that gets. So I'm looking at like very simple things like throwing in incursors and stuff who jump out, shoot you. That unit gets +1 to hit. You run, and it doesn't say only once. I can run 2-3 units of incursors. They pop out, they shoot. Everything else that's going to shoot their direction gets +1 to hit, and one of those targets is going to get full rerolls from Oath of Moment or whatever else is going on. There's going to be a lot of layers to stack on, and
we will find out all about it when the Space
we will, because
before we get into this,
because this is what I mean. Like, this is like Space Marines are going to have so many tools, and I think part of the issue is going to be dealing with more. How do you react responsibly with those tools into something like what Keir's going to put on the table, which is a very dialed in, small set of data sheets that your opponent is really going to know in and out, and how you actually interact with that as someone that's perhaps got a little bit too much information and too many options and more opportunity to change.
Right?
Exactly.
Too many choices.
Yeah,
way too many. But
perfect. So quickly before we go into a 60-second rant corner from Fulvia for this podcast rant, I just want to say thank you so much. We did not get to the rules, but to be honest with you, that is okay because we really dived deep into the T-Suns, talked about different armies going into them. Obviously, as all the tier lists are saying right now, all the content creators, all the streamers are saying T-Suns S tier. They're sitting right at the top at the moment alongside Eldar, and at some point we'll have Eldar talked about. But this is going to be the format of the podcast for the next little bit. We're going to bring a list. We're going to talk about that list, and we're going to go through every army for you guys, especially for those people who are like, oh, I don't really know what I'm going to build, what I'm going to do with this army. Here is just a taster, and every single list that we talk about is going to be in the description below, or if you're part of our Discord, it will be up there in the Discord as well for you to get your hands on as well. And as always, as members, as people on our Discord, you can chat to any of us about anything that we talk about, and we're more than happy to chew your ear off. And be careful, because Keir will talk about Magnus for a very, very long time. There he is again.
May I just for 1 second? I actually got a text today. Last episode, I said that my friend got me into Warhammer, and today Tom said he was upset I didn't give him a specific shout out. So, big love to Tom, my special little boy, a special snowflake.
He's everyone's.
I hope you've listened all the way to the end. This is a good way of making sure that he does.
Yeah.
He's not special, he's a guardsman.
Yeah. We'll be looking out for you, Tom. If you haven't listened all the way to the end, we'll know. And we'll know you're a part-time fan.
Is it time for Fulvio's 60-second rant corner now?
Yeah. Hit me, Fulvio.
Right, time. Is it 60 seconds enough? Because I'm talking about the Death Guard.
It's counting down now, so you're eating your 60 seconds, my guy.
Okay, I'll do my best. So, today's rant is inspired by Mortarion, poor guy, honestly. Mortarion. So, starts with a good thing. Mortarion is toughness 12. It is a 2-up armor save and a 4-up invulnerable save, and it costs only 370 points, which is less than Magnus. Good. Now the bad. It doesn't fly. It doesn't have... No, sorry. It does fly. It doesn't have rapid ingress because it doesn't deep strike. Why? He has a 5-up Fando Pain. Fine. He cannot rapid ingress. Why? Why? That's my 60-second rant.
He could just hover.
No, it's
he
just...
hovers. He just...
Good.
It's just so slow. It's like...
I'm disappointed.
He flies, and it doesn't... I checked. I was about to do another rant, but this one is for my friends at Death Guard.
Oh.
Subthread. There you go. 60 seconds. Spot on.
The realist players in the game. Anyone who's playing Death Guard right now.
All right, sorry. All we can say is, if Death Guard are your any army, we are sorry.
I'm not. Does no one remember what 3 plague bus crawlers used to do? They deserve it.
That's fair.
Like, you deserve it. That's...
Okay, that's not nice. You're right, but it's not nice.
Well, what a happy end, as always. And it's always good to end in a rant. And once again, thank you all for coming on and speaking about Reaper again today. We will be back with another podcast in a couple of weeks. In that podcast, we will be talking about Space Wolves, and given a list gives David a little bit more time to fine tune it as well. But
I'm going to need a lot of time because it's going to keep changing.
It's going to keep changing. So, but I want to thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again in the next podcast.